Eventually you will meet it if you're faithful. If you will treat along these lines, you will find that you will break through. To what extent you will break through, well, there are so many different circumstances involved that nobody can tell you. I have handled multiple sclerosis, and I have seen it react in several ways. In some cases, I've had absolutely no response. That was very few cases. In most of the cases, I had an immediate cessation of the deterioration and was able to keep the person in good health and active and even able to earn a living, although not bringing out the full and complete healing. And in that, I have never yet had a full and complete healing. Now, so it is. I have had the strangest experience with cataracts. I have had some of the most marvelous healings, absolutely instantaneous. And I have had a few very slow healings, and I've had some with absolutely no response at all, where it was just as if I might just well have been treating a blank wall. So you see, there are some of these claims that we do not yet know all there is to be known about them, and we're working at it. And you'll have to do the same thing. Where you have conditions like that, you'll have to undertake the responsibility, because you can't afford to hire a practitioner to give their life to your family. And some of these cases really take just that. Consecration 2, 3, 4 times a day until you break through some of those cases. Now, I'm speaking from the standpoint of the unusual case. The normal ill, or the normal problems that come up, are very quickly dealt with if you deal with them correctly. If you are willing to actually sit down and realize this as and is and am, and then take that nature of error and look it right in the face, whatever the claim may be, and say, yes, but what are you? Do you exist out there, or are you an illusion? Do you have a law to support you? Do you have a cause? Do you see that? And then you'll find out that you'll meet most of the cases that come to you very quickly. I have an idea that most of these so-called incurable cases are not really physical at all. They appear outwardly as physical, but they have something to do with soul influence or lack of it, sense of separation from God, probably even in prenatal experience. Not that they're responsible for it. Don't ever criticize or judge anybody, because none of us are responsible for the particular ills that we have. They are something that are beyond our ability to have until we are spiritual students. After we're spiritual students, then it's spiritual wickedness in high places to go and sin some more. The Master tells you, I forgive you, but go and sin no more. The person who has come to a spiritual teaching and then insists on human conduct, they have themselves to blame for the consequences. And that is one reason that this classwork is so sacred to me. Please be assured that I have absolutely no interest in any of the money that's involved in my classwork. Not any interest whatsoever. I can live beautifully without it. So that I am guided only by one motive in my classwork, and that is to bring students to as high a level of spiritual development as I can. Now, for that reason, I try to not have students go through closed class until they are sufficiently studied in the writings and recordings, so that at least they have a basis, a foundation, so that when they hear me, they're not listening to Greek or Sanskrit. That they understand what I'm talking about, they've met it in the books, they've seen the principles here and there, and they're familiar with it. Then, I don't mind how many closed classes a person goes through while they're on the way, but I would like for everyone not to give consideration to practitioner classes until they've had at the very least 6 months, a year and a half, to put this that they learn in the closed class into work, into action, so that they are beginning to get some response to it, beginning to bring out healings. Then, when they begin to bring out healings, then they're ready for practitioner work, which will really put the seal on it. Now, why is this? The reason is that the mere fact that I tell you these things, or the mere fact that you hear them later on tape, isn't going to do you a bit of good. It's only what registers in your consciousness and what you develop through constant practice that's going to do you good. If you can take the lessons that you have received in these 3 nights, and if you could practice these as faithfully as we have a right to expect of you, if you would practice these for the next 6 months or the next year, you would begin to see some fine healing work come through. Then, if you had some fine healing work come through, you would be ready for some of the work of the practitioner class. Then, again, keep on attending closed classes, as many as possible, as many practitioner classes as possible, because you're not learning more, you are having your spiritual consciousness developed. I can't increase your knowledge after the first closed class. You've got all the knowledge in that. You've got the whole letter of truth in this class and in my books. I'll never add any knowledge to you after this, but I will certainly deepen your consciousness if you let me. But I can't do it just by taking you through class after class after class. No, that's just adding a lot of knowledge. You must take the principle that you're given, practice it, the same as if you were studying music. Wouldn't it be terrible if you found a music teacher who would give you a lesson every day of the week without you having practiced what you got the day before? You'd know right well that teacher wanted nothing but your fees. And so it is here. If we were interested in fees, maybe we'd be conscienceless enough to say, well, go to class every day and let's keep on going. But that's not the object of this work. That's not. The only part money plays in this work is the expense that's taken care of with it. No other purpose. The object of this work is developing the spiritual consciousness of the student, because the spiritual consciousness will do healing work. It'll do more than healing work. It'll change the whole consciousness of this world. But not by the knowledge you get in class, but by what you do with the knowledge that you get in class. To what extent you use it in the developing of your consciousness. Now, those who know me in the States, if you could meet them, will tell you. To me, a class is a sacred undertaking, and it's one that I'm very, very fussy about. I have lots of fights about it, because all the people don't agree that I'm right. But it just so happens that I agree that I'm right, and I'm a majority with me. I don't have a board of directors or a board of governors. I don't even have an advisory council. I go to God. God tells me what I want to know, and if I'm mistaken in what he tells me, then I pay the penalty, and afterwards I have to correct it. But this is what I have learned in my life. When I began the healing work, I was getting fine results in healing right from the beginning, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why or how. And all you have to do is look at my record, and you will see I spent 16 years finding out before I ever taught one person. Now, that's having patience. But that is because I didn't want to make a mistake. I didn't want the responsibility for, you see, this work is the soul of a person. It isn't their body. If you only kill their body, that would be all right. They get another chance to pick it up and start over. But if you give people wrong spiritual teaching, you're really perverting their soul. You're really putting them off the track, and it may be generations before they get back on again. And a person who undertakes to teach should be awfully certain they're living close to God, because otherwise you're tampering with another person's consciousness, another person's soul, another person's hopes of eternity. And that should not be done lightly, and the proof that I've tried to do that is that for 16 years I never had a class. I just stayed in offices and healed and healed and healed and healed until in my final year I took care of 135 cases per day, 7 days per week, 52 weeks in that entire year. And then I said, well, now I'm at the maximum. I can't take on any more. Now I can stop. And I did stop that amount of practice and permitted the teaching to start. Do you see that? And so it is now. If you look at these manuscripts that have come off the tapes from the beginning, you will find I haven't rubbed out a sentence. I haven't had to backtrack. I haven't had to say, well, I was mistaken about this. Not a sentence has been erased. Nobody has, no teacher, no practitioner, no student has ever been able to say to me, look, you've got a wrong statement in your books. There may be a misprint somewhere, but there are no wrong statements. Why? I waited 16 years before those things came through. Certainly, you can wait 6 months or a year and put these into practice so that you say, aha, I've got the foundation, I've got my teeth into this little bit, now I'm ready for another meal, a deeper meal. Do you see that? Then you'll find that we will have consecrated classes. Then you'll find we have consecrated students. Then you'll find that we can go out in the world and be an example. But you know as well as I do, there's already too much criticism about Christian Scientists and Unity students and New Thought students who aren't living up to what their teaching is, and the teaching gets blamed. Teaching has no right to get blamed. It's the fault of a student who goes through class for a week or a month and gets a degree and then tries to set themselves up as if they really knew something. And nobody knows anything that way. Nobody does. This is a matter of spiritual unfoldment, spiritual development, and so it must be. Now then, remember that every specific claim that presents itself to you has to be met in your consciousness. Every specific claim. Not only when people ask you for help, but if you walk along the street and see an intoxicated person, that is a claim coming to you. If you see a crippled person, if you see a beggar, that is, don't ignore it. Don't pass it by. Don't be like those fellows that passed by the man on the road to Jericho and let him lie there. Don't you let him lie there. Physically, yes. Spiritually, no. Lift them right up in your consciousness to the truth of being. We have had this experience now 3 times. Once in Honolulu, where we had a class like this, and we have some girls who have to take a bus to go to their home after the class, and we had had a lesson on this very thing of not passing by. And this night a girl got into a bus, and there was a man in the back, very boisterous and very obscene in his language, and drunk as a lord. And this girl began immediately with the realization that God was manifest as individual being. And as a matter of fact, that Honolulu class, the title of it is The Infinite Nature of Individual Being. And so she started on that, the infinite nature of individual being. Individual being includes all that God is. Individual being has only the qualities of God. And so she began within herself, and finally that man came over and touched her and said, thank you for praying for me. I'm all right now. And then we had a Canadian girl of 19, a little ballet dancer, who was going through a class in Seattle, and we had had this very same lesson. And she was accustomed to going down to the coffee shop for a cup of tea before retiring after the class. And she got down there, and at the very opposite end of the room is a man, and again intoxicated and boisterous, noisy. And she began here right with her realization. And this man walked over to her and said, Miss, will you talk to me about God? And for 30 minutes he never let her go, kept her there talking to him about God. He said, I will never drink another drop. Do you see that? You can't pass by these people in the road who are sick, sinful, dead. Lift them up in your consciousness, and realize the infinite nature of God as individual you and me, as. And then realize that that law is operating, is. Do you see that? And as you do that, if they're at all receptive, they'll get up and walk. They'll feel it. They'll know it. There is an experience that took place in the shop a tobacconist shop in Canada. A man was in there purchasing, and he fell down dead. And somebody came in off the street, then they called a doctor, and the man was pronounced dead. But in that city, there is a truth center, and the minister of it is a very, very fine leader, a very fine minister, a very spiritual woman. And that woman was passing by the shop, and seeing the crowd, she walked in. And then she was told that this was a dead man. They were waiting for the ambulance. And she knelt by that man, and he got up and walked away. Yes. Not an Infinite Way student, a truth student of other teachings, but a woman of sufficient developed spiritual consciousness that she could raise the dead. Do you see that? Now, that is what we have to do, and you don't do that just going through class. You don't do that going through 10 classes. You do that with whatever truth you have, and utilize it, and practice with it until your consciousness is so developed that you won't see a dead man or a sick man or a drunken man or a beggar, but you will actually see through the appearance to the infinite nature of God appearing as individual being. And so you will have those healings. Now, is that clear? The next question, could you give us the approach to the first steps for children? I wish I could. We are just at the stage now where one of our students is developing the work of teaching students. She has just started to make some tapes, and she will soon begin writing articles, and the reason she is doing it is that, first of all, she is the mother of 3 children and a very successful mother of 3 very wonderful children. And so her own life experience has equipped her, and she's been a student for many, many years of this work, and is beginning to put it in form for the teaching of children. You see, one thing I've learned, an hour of Sunday school may be very good if you have a good Sunday school teacher, but it's limited in its goodness to 1 hour a week. And children aren't taught that way. Children are taught by the example of the parents in the home. That's how children are taught. Children don't learn through the brain, they absorb through their consciousness. Children know whether parents quarrel at home or whether they're friendly. Children know whether there's integrity in the home or whether there isn't. And they take on that integrity or non-integrity by absorption. And so it is, you can't teach a child that by telling it that God is present where you are. But you could take a child, and every morning when it awakens, you could say, now let's close the eyes for 1 minute and just realize God is right here in the bed with us, right where we are. And before that child sits down to eat, you could start with it and now let us say thanks for this meal because God set this table for us. And you could teach that child that it must never go outside of a door without stopping to close its eyes for a second and thank God God is on the other side of the door too. You can teach a child never to go into a classroom without realizing God is in this classroom. You could teach a child never to start playing without realizing God is on this playground, or God is in the very heart of every individual, every person here, every child here, every teacher here. A parent can do that. Sunday school can't do it because it has to be done at the time when the child is rushing pell-mell without thought. And so it is. It has to be taught at mealtime. It has to be taught at bedtime. Let us not go to sleep until we thank God for being with us all night as he was with us all day. Nobody can do that but the parent. So it is that if the infinite way is good enough for a parent to follow, it must be good enough for them to impart to their children not merely as knowledge but living. On the other hand, if they have a child that they love enough, it must be worthwhile to go to some trouble to give it the best spiritual teaching they can find for it, whatever one that may be at any given time. And so as far as I'm concerned at this moment, the responsibility for teaching lies with the parents. Since I know, just like I know that class teaching is no good in and of itself, just a week of these hours is of very little value. It's what you do with it that makes it of value. So it is with the children. But I do say that parents will need some guidance in the how and so forth, and that I can't give because I'm not that good with children. But there are students of ours who have been very successful, and it won't be long until we'll have some tapes and some articles and things like that to help parents with their children. But I am afraid that no infinite way teaching will ever take the place of a parent. Now, why didn't somebody tell me? It's almost breakfast time. Or midnight lunch, anyhow. Well, you know, really and truly, last night we said there wasn't anything more, but tonight I'm convinced that must be so. This must be the class. So maybe tomorrow night we'll just... Can we play marbles or tiddlywinks? Thank you.